You're too distracted. I canceled my daughter's K-pop concert after she ignored her college goals. And when she locked herself in her room, I wondered if discipline had just cost me her trust. My name's Mark, 47. My wife, Lisa, and I raised 2 kids. Ava, 16, and Ben, 14. By a laminated playbook on the fridge. Curfew at 10, phones docked by 11, no spontaneous sleepovers, and if you want a yes, bring a plan. Ava thrives on it. She color codes her life. Physics in blue, debate in green, SAT drills in red. She has a spreadsheet titled Colleges, Targets, and Long Shots, and she updates it like a stock trader. Her one indulgence is Nova 7, a K-pop group that flips some switch in her posters, choreo, fan charity drives. A year ago she brokered a deal, aced the metrics, SAT, awards, essays, and I'd fund a Denver concert trip and a little merch. I shook on it, convinced the phase would pass before their tour got real. Meanwhile, Ben skidded into a rough semester. Panic attacks, missing work, a locker that looked like a meteor site. I floated him a robotics camp and a Comic-Con weekend, about $280, and, stupidly, borrowed from Ava's concert tin. Tour dates weren't announced. I'd refill it next paycheck. Still, every time I saw her mapping study blocks around live streams, I heard myself say it, "You're too distracted." Honors night at East Ridge is supposed to feel like a small-town parade in a gym. Banners drooping from rafters, parents in sensible shoes, teachers balancing pride with exhaustion. Ava sat on the aisle, back straight, hair in a low ponytail that meant business. When Mrs. Delgado called her up for the community STEM drive, laptops repaired and donated to middle schoolers, the applause had an extra snap. Then a stray voice from the juniors, "See you at Nova 7, Ava." Others chimed in, a wave of teenage teasing. Someone even did that little fan chant clap. Mrs. Delgado, trying to be cute, leaned into the mic. "Looks like someone's got summer plans." I don't know what came over me. The mic was there. I stepped forward, smiled too wide, and said, just loud enough to reach the back bleachers, "No concerts until college goals are locked." The silence had that hollow gym echo. Then a thin giggle, then the gentle collapse of clapping. I saw Ava's face freeze in profile. It wasn't a glare. It was calculation, the kind she uses on calculus problems. Where are the variables, what's salvageable? Lisa tugged my sleeve. A whisper fragment. "Mark." Mrs. Delgado recovered with a joke about discipline. But the air had soured. On the drive home, tires hummed on asphalt like a lie detector needle. Ben chewed gum nervously and asked if we could stop for fries. No one answered. When we pulled into the garage, Ava went straight upstairs, not slamming the door, just closing it with a click like a lab switch. Lisa waited until Ben retreated to the basement, then turned to me with a look I recognized from our early years. The not here, not now, but definitely look. I got there first. The speech, rational, bullet-pointed. We need to keep the main thing the main thing. College outcomes are fragile. A concert is a distraction factory. I overpromised. I'm course-correcting. By humiliating her? Lisa asked. I set a boundary publicly, so she won't test it privately. She kept her end, Lisa said, words clipped. SAT, essays, awards. You made a deal, Mark. I didn't answer. I retreated to the office like a CEO into a boardroom. If I was going to be the villain, I'd at least be organized. I opened my password manager and started the cleanup. Changed Ava's email password, then the recovery email to mine, rolled 2FA to my phone. Her fan accounts? New passwords. I called the bank and had them place a merchant block on ticketing platforms. Temporary parental control, I told the rep. The rep, in that honeyed customer service voice, asked if I wanted spend alerts. Yes, every transaction. I toggled parental settings on her phone through the family plan. Then I sent a text to the community center. Ava will pause dance rehearsals until after AP testing. Academic priorities. Lisa stood in the doorway, arms crossed. Don't do this. She's 16, I said. Adults keep promises. Children need training wheels. We're not a corporation, Mark. But I had already put Operation Order into motion. phone confiscation until APs, a 6 to 10 p.m. study block at the dining table. No extraneous extracurriculars. Like any good policy, it was clear, comprehensive, and suffocating. Ava didn't fight. She nodded once when I asked for her phone. She handed over the spare charger too, the one we both knew she'd taped under her desk. She moved her laptop to the dining table without sighing. She ate a third of dinner, said thanks, and excused herself. If she had cried in the shower, she did it efficiently, leaving no evidence but steam. By Thursday, kids at school had weaponized my sentence into a meme. Ben came home carrying shrapnel from the gossip mill. They say you did a dad mic drop. They're making TikToks. I pretended not to care, but when I scrolled later, I found a blurry clip from the gym and captions like, "When dad becomes the principal." The comments were split down the middle, half calling me strict but right, half calling me a tyrant in a fleece vest. Lisa showed me one from Ava's dance coach. "She's not herself. Please undo whatever you did." I stared at the message and, like any stressed manager, offloaded it to the circular file in my head. At school, Ava's friends tried to run interference. They dropped by our porch with a bundt cake and a speech about balance. I thanked them for the cake and gave them a speech about discipline. They left the cake and their hope on the same step. That night, Ava skipped dinner. The night after, she picked at salad like it was paperwork. She started sleeping in brittle increments, light on and off like a faulty street lamp. The principal emailed, "We discourage parental announcements during academic ceremonies." I drafted an apology and sat on it. I told myself that embarrassment is a cheap tuition for a lasting lesson. Saturday morning, I found Ava at the dining table, notebooks stacked like a fort, highlighters lined to attention. She was doing problems she could solve in her sleep, the academic equivalent of pacing. "We'll go for a walk later," I said carefully. "Fresh air." "After study block," she said. Polite, neutral, professional. "You can ask for adjustments," I offered. "I'm good." Still polite. The words like ice cubes. Lisa tried a different front. She sat beside her, slid over a plate of toast, slipped a hand onto Ava's back. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. I stood in the doorway and felt like a security camera. By week 2, the systems worked on paper. Grades up, distractions down. And yet, the house sounded wrong. The cat stopped sleeping on Ava's backpack. Ben tiptoed. Lisa moved through rooms with a careful hush like a nurse in a ward. I told myself that quiet meant focus. But the silence had a weight. It hollowed the living room, stretched the hallway, gathered under doors. Then the small leaks began. I got a bank alert. $0 declined at a ticketing site. Not possible, she had no phone, no card. I checked the logs. Attempted purchase from a school IP. I tightened the blocks, patted myself on the back for vigilance. Another alert. Attempted login to her fan forum from an unfamiliar device. I reset passwords again, rotated 2FA like a safecracker. I told myself I was protecting her from chaos, but the person I was outmaneuvering wasn't a hacker. It was a girl trying to breathe. On Sunday, Lisa said, "Therapist, this week. For all of us." I said, "After APs." She closed her eyes and nodded in that way that means noted for the record. That night, as I locked Ava's phone in the desk drawer, I caught my reflection in the glass. A reasonable man. Behind the glass, a message preview flashed before the screen slept. An email subject line in Ava's inbox that I shouldn't have read but did. Volunteer roster confirmed. Nova Hearts Project, Denver. A fan charity drive. A thing I'd probably have praised if it weren't wrapped in the wrong band's logo. I clicked the drawer shut. The house exhaled. Somewhere upstairs, a faucet ran, then stopped. I told myself again that I was saving her future. The part one refused to say aloud was shorter and sharper. I was also saving face. Saturday morning, I brewed coffee like a ritual absolution and called a family logistics huddle. Ben arrived with a bowl of cereal. Lisa folded her arms. Ava came with a folder that said, Denver, in her perfect block letters. I cleared my throat and read from the policy brief I drafted in my head. Given safety concerns, crowds, travel, Timing with exams. Lisa's pre-bought tickets are canceled. We'll request a refund or credit. Ava didn't flinch. She slid the folder open and fanned out proof like a paralegal. SAT Superscore, AP practice results, debate medals, volunteer hours, 2 mentor letters with embossed seals. You promised, she said evenly. You tied my life to check boxes. I checked them. You erased the only personal thing. It's not the only thing, I said, reaching for softening. It's just priorities. Lisa spoke without looking at me. You don't have to love Nova 7, she said. But you do have to respect her. Respect. The word landed like a gavel. I dodged it. Don't cry, work, I said to Ava, out of reflex. The phrase that had kept me moving through layoffs and deadlines. Except she wasn't crying. That made it worse. She gathered her papers into perfect alignment, clipped them, and left them on the table like exhibits filed with the court. I'll email customer service, Lisa said quietly, for the refund. Or roll it, I added, as if we were rebooking a business trip. After APs, we'll revisit. The house went back to its new hush. Ben retreated to his basement orbit. Ava studied with the intensity of a lantern held too close to paper. Lisa cleaned a perfectly clean counter. I opened my laptop and answered work emails that did not matter, because you can't be snubbed by an inbox. Monday, the choir teacher texted a line that shivered. Ava broke down. On stage. I drove to the school with a manager's calm, the one I wear to client crises. In the auditorium, I found her sitting on the lip of the stage, shoulders shaking, an open sheet of music like a white flag on her knees. The room smelled of varnish and teenage shampoo. Let's get you some air, I said, kneeling. She nodded, eyes red, chin lifted in that proud-gutted way I know from her toddler falls. I wanted to hand her a solution like a towel. Instead, I offered a line I mistakenly thought would sound supportive. Push through. You're stronger than this. She looked at me like I'd handed her a brick. We were summoned to the counselor's office, posters about resilience, a plant with more confidence than most freshmen. Ms. Hayes, late 30s, cardigan armor, went clinical soft. Ava's essays are circling themes of control and invisibility. That's not a critique. It's a map. She slid a tissue box our way like an indictment. I heard myself say, family is not a school matter. Came out crisp and polished like a policy. Ms. Hayes didn't blink. Anything that impedes a student's ability to learn is a school matter, she said. Lisa's hand folded around her wrist. A small apology offered to the room for my tone. On the way out, I stepped into the men's room and stared at the mirror. Mr. Rankings, I thought, practice round, and then berated myself for the cheapness of the joke. I washed my hands twice and returned to the hallway where Ava was leaning against a trophy case, reading names of other people's victories. At lunch, the cafeteria performed its twin miracles, noise and observation. When you're the parent on campus, eyes find you. Ava stood to leave her table when I approached. I touched her elbow to steady her tray. We'll fix this, I whispered. What is this? She asked calmly. Your reputation? A boy with a phone paused mid-bite. I saw the red dot of recording the modern confessional light. I should have stepped back. Instead, I doubled down on sanity theater. We're aligned on goals, I announced, as if we were co-authors. She lifted her chin. Dad? She said, not loud, just clear enough to reach the next table. You love my numbers more than me. There was no slap of sound, no gasps. The cafeteria simply kept existing, and in that continuation, tray clatter, soda machine cough, the sentence found ballast. Someone muttered, yikes. The boy's red dot pulsed. I love you, I said, quickly, like stopping a spill. I love you. It felt like placing a sticker on a cracked windshield. She nodded, almost kind, then moved past me with surgical precision. I stood with 2 trays, one mine, one empty. A custodian pointed me to the dish window, and I obeyed because it was the only order offered. By last period, the video pinged its way through the school chat, edited into a loop with captions. Mr. Rankings, KPI kid. Someone added a laugh track. Someone else added a slow zoom on my face. Ben texted me a skull emoji. Then immediately, sorry, they're being idiots. I responded with a thumbs up I didn't feel. That night, I found the meme on my own feed. My colleagues had stayed out of it mercifully, but the comments from parents split along a familiar fault line. Disciplined dad versus helicopter tyrant. Lisa scrolled beside me on the couch, silent. When she put her phone down, she said, "If you loved her, you would stop treating love like a syllabus." "I'm keeping a promise to her future," I said. "You're breaking the one to her present," she replied. Ava ate alone, then left her plate rinsed, aligned with the sink edge. Precision as protest. I opened the drawer where her phone slept and checked it as if vital signs could be read from a battery icon. New emails queued in her inbox, college updates, a reply from the Nova Hearts Project. "We'll hold your volunteer slot." I closed the drawer and locked it like that could lock a life. Before bed, I drafted an apology to Ms. Hayes and didn't send it. I wrote Ava a note. "Proud of you, let's reset." And didn't leave it. I imagined taking the Denver folder from the table and restoring the bills to their envelope, calling the bank, unblocking the buyers, reopening the doors. Then I imagined the audience roaring in a dark arena. The crush of bodies, the calendar slipping, the rankings dropping. Yes, rankings. The thing I claimed not to care about, except when confronted with the soft demands of a human being who did. I went to sleep with the dull throb of a man convinced he's right and terrified he isn't. In the morning, the sun landed on the refrigerator where our laminated playbook hung, corners curled. I smoothed it flat like a map and decided the route was still correct. What I didn't see were the detours already in motion. Lisa's quiet recalculations, Ben's hush-hush group chats, and Ava's softly detonating plan to keep a promise I'd sworn off, without me. I went tactical. DMV is a privilege, not a right, I announced, clicking the October calendar square as if moving a chess piece. Driver's license delayed to fall. I canceled the girls' weekend to Boulder with the sterile efficiency of a travel agent. Refund window met. Rescheduling TBD. I sent the community center a neat email. Ava will pause collaborative dance shoots. Academic bandwidth. I added a blanket prohibition. Fan kits, trading cards, photo cards, the whole cottage economy of affection. Meanwhile, I approved Ben's second day at the Comic-Con. Continuity and exposure therapy. I told Lisa, "He did so well yesterday." "You measure love with a calculator," she said, voice flat. "And you forget the units are people." I wrote that line down in my head, the way I sometimes do with brutal feedback, thinking I'd turn it into improvement. Then I ignored it. At the con, I went as a supervisor, which meant shadowing Ben at a distance of 5 feet and muttering about prices. $30 for a print of a spaceship that looks like a shoe? His friends laughed the first 2 times. The third time, an older kid with glitter eyeliner said, "Sir, we're chilling." I said, "This is a circus for grown children." Ben's shoulders pinched up to his ears like a tortoise. At the cosplay panel, while other dads took pictures or sat in the back scrolling, I hovered by the aisle and offered notes about time management. Ben's friend Kim whispered, "Dude." Ben nodded at the floor, silent. On the drive home, he folded inward, hands tucked under thighs, and did not ask for fries. PDA night offered public penance dressed as community. I wore the fleece vest like armor. We stood in the library among stapled newsletters and fundraising thermoses. A mother I barely knew, perfect blowout, perfect teeth, cocked her head and said, not quite loudly, "Are you the dad who confiscates tickets like it's the 90s? The laugh rolled, not cruel, just collective. I smiled like a politician. We're focusing on priorities. Someone clinked a mug. To priorities. Later, as we walked to the car, Lisa said, "This is not a referendum, Mark." I said, "Then stop voting against me." At home, the kitchen became a neutral zone. Ava stopped eating with us. Instead, she hovered at 10 p.m., assembling makeshift meals with unthreatening geometry. Toast halves, apple slices, a yogurt aligned with the counter's edge. By day, she went faint and quiet, a screensaver version of herself. Teachers sent micro-reports. Ava stared through the quiz. Ava present but nonverbal in discussion. Ms. Hayes suggested family therapy. You said after APs, Lisa reminded me. We need it now, I said. Introducing therapy in crisis teaches dependency. We'll schedule in June. The sentence was so blandly confident that I almost believed it had science behind it. Ava's counterpunch arrived not as a scream but a packet. One evening she placed a manila folder by my laptop and went upstairs. Inside, a printed memorandum of understanding. Dated last year in her neat font, a joke at the time, signatures from me and Lisa under the line in exchange for deliverables, grades, applications, the party of the first part mark, funds 1 Nova 7 concert with reasonable boundaries. She had annotated it with footnotes. Deliverables met. Reasonable boundaries negotiated. A post-it on top read, if contracts matter at work, they matter at home. It wasn't a tantrum. It was casework. I left the folder on the dining table like evidence. Lisa's counterpunch was quieter and sharper. She opened a separate savings sub-account called Safeties and began drip funding it from her freelance checks. When I found her spreadsheet, aisle seats, chaperone plan, hotel near light rail, a timed exit blueprint, I called it undermining discipline. It's harm reduction, she said. If she goes with me and with a plan. She is not going. Then say, I'm breaking my promise, without hiding behind safety. I waited for anger to make me large. Didn't. I felt small and correct, a terrible combination. Meanwhile, Ben stopped bringing his prints out of their sleeves. He stopped humming in the kitchen. At school, he walked out of lunch twice. Too many comments about his policy dad. When the social worker emailed, Ben is shutting down, I replied with a paragraph about adolescent boundaries that read like it had been copy-pasted from a brochure. She invited us to a meeting. I declined. Our family handles our family. I wrote, as if it were a brand slogan. Ava's friends tried to pilot small truces. Could we do a watch party at our place? One mom texted. No live crowds. We'll donate the ticket cost to a local shelter. Reasonable, generous, admirable. I said no. We don't negotiate with obsessions. That was the day Ava walked out of choir. She didn't cry. She stood, left her binder open like a door, and kept walking down the hall until a campus aide caught up with her and convinced her to sit by the nurse's office plant. Lisa picked her up. I was on a conference call talking about aligning incentives. At dinner, the conflict had gone past words into weather. Thunder without rain. Lisa plated salmon. Ben pushed rice grains into Morse code no one could read. Ava did not come downstairs. The cat slept on the table like a treaty. I'm going to Denver if I have to sell my camera, Lisa said finally. Aisle seats. Early exit. Volunteer door with Nova hearts. It includes a chaperone wristband. She'll be out before the encore. That was the first I heard of the volunteer wristband. What door? I asked. She met my eyes. Ava has been volunteering with their charity drive since January. Logistics, donations. You would know if you read the emails. I blocked the emails, I said, and heard how it landed. She earned her way in through the volunteer list, Lisa said. No crowd crush, no pit. Back corridor access. She'll be safe. I reached for authority like a life ring. Absolutely not. You are teaching her to route around me. She's learning to route around harm, Lisa said. If the harm is you, you can choose to stop. I stood. The room tilted, not physically but morally. If you take her, I said careful. Do not expect me to underwrite anything else. Lisa stood too. We stopped expecting that weeks ago. Later that night, I found a new email in my inbox. Ava. Subject line, breach and cure. It read like a lawyer letter drafted by a child who had learned to argue from me. Notice of breach of agreement dated June 12th. Opportunity to cure. Honor the promise with safety constraints by X date. If not, remedies include alternate funding, mom, volunteer access, Nova Hearts, and formal boundaries, family therapy. She CC'd Lisa and, with surgical precision, BCC'd herself. The kid had learned governance from the governing. When I didn't respond, the house organized without me. Lisa rearranged shifts. Ben texted Cam an apology for the con and then went silent. An online status like a porch light that suddenly goes out. Ava printed packing checklists and put them in a drawer, not as defiance but as doctrine. This is how we proceed. The walkouts multiplied. Lisa walked out of a Sunday service after a sermon on obedience made her laugh once, sharply, then cover her mouth. Ben walked out of a math test halfway through, stomach knotted, went to the nurse. Ava walked out of the counselor's office when I arrived uninvited, sat on the curb instead, chin up like a statue. I walked out of a PDA subcommittee meeting when they joked about Mr. Rankings leads fundraising. I could not hold both my dignity and the coffee stir. I kept banning things because banning is easier than backing up. Each ban made the house quieter, which I mistook for compliance. In the silence, a new architecture rose. My family's plan. Not to overthrow me, but to function around me like a detour around a collapsed bridge. I told myself bridges get repaired. I did not yet understand that sometimes the river changes course. May arrived like a memo with no pleasantries. Ava opened an email on a Tuesday morning. An early offer from a university in St. Louis, merit aid, housing priority. She read it twice, expressionless, then forwarded it to Lisa with a heart, to Ben with "We did it," and to me with a subject line that was just the school's name. No exclamation point. I replied, "Proud of you." She read it. She did not respond. 2 days later, she knocked on my office door, the way employees knock on a manager's glass wall. "Graduation," she said. "Please don't come." My first thought was logistics. "But the tickets." "I don't want to fake we're okay on stage," she said, evenly. "It'll make my hands shake." I nodded because nodding was the only thing that wouldn't turn into a fight. After she left, I put my forehead on the desk and watched the cursor blink in a document that used to be my life. On the day itself, I ironed a shirt out of muscle memory, then took it off and sat at the dining table with my laptop. The school's live stream buffer spun, then resolved into mortarboards, a principal with a microphone, and a girl with my last name walking like she'd learned balance on a wire. Lisa filmed from the aisle. Ben hooped off camera. The chat scrolled with emojis and Ava. I typed "congratulations" Ava into the chat and deleted it before hitting enter. You can heckle a stream, you cannot parent it. After the ceremony, the grad forum posted photos and a quote from her English teacher. "Some achieve more when they're seen." The caption didn't name me. It didn't need to. I closed the tab and read it again later in a dark kitchen, like a verdict I was memorizing for appeal. I tried the reset the next weekend: cafe, movie, park, a tour of neutral places where families pretend well. At the cafe, I thought a joke would bridge the silence. "Hipster prices," I said, holding a $6 muffin like evidence. It landed like a jab in a bruise. Ava said calmly, "We're done pretending your contempt is care." Ben looked at his shoes with the guilty relief of someone whose line got delivered by someone braver. Lisa didn't argue. She folded her napkin in half, then into quarters, then into something that looked like a surrender flag. At the park, I attempted a speech about fresh starts. Ava watched a dog chase a stick and said, "Fresh starts don't begin with punishments." Ben pressed the burrito foil into a perfect square. I told a story about my own father and his hard edges, trying to turn biography into mitigation. Lisa said, not unkindly, "Mark, stop auditioning for the part of a man who learned." On Monday, Lisa opened a separate account and told me, without drama, "I don't trust your priorities." There was no list, no ultimatum, just a signature at a credit union and a transfer out of the shared pool that had once felt like a lake. She changed the autopays for the kids' things, therapists, tutors, bus cards, to the new account. I said, "We can fix this." She said, "We can't fund it that way." 2 weeks later, she moved with the kids to her sister's for a while. It was a weekday morning. A row of boxes, books, hoodies, a lamp shaped like an astronaut, stood like a small skyline by the door. Ava took the Denver folder last, slid it into a backpack. Ben clipped the dog's leash and the dog, Traitor by instinct, loyal by love. Followed them down the hall, paws skittering on hardwood. At the threshold, Lisa looked at me in the precise way of a nurse checking a monitor. "We'll text you the schedule," she said. No rage, no theatrics, just an update to a care plan. The house did not echo. It absorbed. Their rooms stayed full, beds made, books alphabetized, but they stopped making sound. I watered the plants too often. I bought groceries we used to like and threw them out at the end of the week like offerings a God didn't accept. I moved the laminated rules off the fridge because I couldn't stand their cheerful certainty. The magnet left a clean rectangle in the dust. I kept touching it. At school events, avoidance became its own choreography. Parents smiled with corners of their mouths and slid their bodies an inch to the left. One dad asked about the playoffs, then remembered who I was and replaced his question with weather. When I did pickups, kids funneled into cars that were not mine with a visible relief. I was not exiled. I was simply unneeded. Ben, paradoxically, came back to life like a plant moved to better light. He hit another convention with his uncle. No supervision. Just snacks and a ride, and texted photos of a pin he traded for, his grin half crooked like when he was 8. Crowd was loud, but I managed, he wrote. Cam helped. I stared at the photo in the canned soup aisle and realized I was crying because no one noticed. I still had keys, of course, and weekends and the legal shape of a father. But the living version had shifted. Ava coordinated the Denver plan with Lisa and the Nova Hearts volunteer lead. Their group chat chimed on a phone I no longer held. I watched the anti-theft light on the drawer flash in the evenings. A small red heartbeat with nothing to guard. I tried one last grand gesture. Offered to cover the St. Louis deposit in full. Ava replied, polite, surgical. Thanks. Mom already handled it. Then, a minute later, a softer text. I'll pay you back for the camp you bought Ben last winter. The precision of that split me, grateful and gutted. On the last day of May, I logged into the school portal to print Ava's unofficial transcript, something I had done every quarter without being asked. The system timed out. Access changed by Guardian settings, it said. I stared at the sentence until it wasn't a sentence, just shapes. Then I closed the laptop, opened the front door, and listened to a neighborhood I had ignored. Sprinklers hissing, a mail truck grinding its gears, a kid on a scooter counting cracks. The world went on, indifferent and solvable. Inside, the world I had built on compliance had collapsed into something messier and more honest. I stood in the doorway like a mannequin and practiced not correcting anything. The school psychologist's notes were blunt in a way that felt almost kind. Symbols matter. Promises are trust currency. I had filed that sentence like a receipt, but it kept resurfacing in the quiet, on the stairs, in the pause before the kettle clicked, in the rectangle of dust where the fridge rules used to hang. I had called my daughter's joy empty, then confiscated the one instrument she used to measure whether I stood with her. I had managed my son like a project while narrating my contempt for the thing that steadied him. The result wasn't a fight I could win or lose. It was a quiet boycott. And then an empty house. If this were a corporate postmortem, I'd put it in bullets, assign owners, propose remediations. The truth is plainer and uglier. Structure and goals still matter. I won't pretend I don't believe that. But stripped of respect, they calcify into cold control. I thought I was building a staircase. I was laying ice. What should have happened and what Lisa, to her credit, tried to do while I insisted on being a wall. I should have owned the breach. Not the values, the process. I should have said out loud, I broke the deal. Then I should have restored the money immediately, not as a favor but as restitution, and put a plan on the table with dates, seats, chaperones, safety rules, exit routes. I should have tailored my approach without turning it into a referendum on who was weaker or stronger. I should have given Ava agency. Who goes, where she sits, how she prepares. And I should have agreed to 3 or 4 family therapy sessions, not because we were collapsing, but because the vocabulary at home had shrunk to commands and size. The day I finally said some of that, the house was already half archived. Lisa stood by the bookshelf, hands on the spines of novels I'd pretended to read. I hear you, she said. Keep going. I wanted to say everything in one burst, to cram an apology and a plan and a revelation into a single good sentence. There isn't one. Apology is granular. This call, that night, this word. Plan is granular too. Aisle seats, not center. Water bottle caps off. Wristbands waiting by the volunteer table. A promise to leave before the encore even if the favorite song hasn't played. Revelation is the slowest, days of paying attention without correcting the thing you're noticing. I wrote Ava an email. She had asked for written, not spoken. Breach acknowledged. Money restored. If you want me there, I'll sit in the seat you choose and follow your rules. If you don't, I'll be the ride and the exit plan. She replied with a thank you that read like a receipt. Concise, precise, no exclamation point. I'm going with Mom, she added. I'll text when we're out. It wasn't punishment. It was a boundary that made sense. When the night came, I drove them to the venue and parked in a lot that smelled like diesel and old rain. I handed Lisa a small kit like a nervous airport dad, earplugs, mints, a tiny flashlight, and she smiled without saying the thing I deserved. You could have done this months ago. Ava adjusted the volunteer wristband and checked her list. ID, charger, snack, water. It mirrored my own instinct for preparation so perfectly that it hurt. We'll be out before the crush, she said, not to reassure me, but to remind herself that she could keep her own promises now. I waited in the car. From the highway overpass, sound carried like weather. Bass thrum, a wave of scream, then a tide pulling back. I pictured the aisle seats, the exit door, the corridor light. I pictured Lisa's hand on Ava's shoulder. Two silhouettes with movement they chose. When the text came, out. Headed to car. I felt something unclench that ambition had never managed to loosen. After Denver, the house did not rewind. It evolved. Lisa kept her separate account. We set a schedule that looked like the world's driest treaty. Days pickups, who brings the dog to the groomer. Ben's status light returned. He sent me a photo from another con, this time with Cam and an uncle who knows when to orbit and when to sit. Ava, meanwhile, packed for St. Louis. She did it with a gentleness that broke me. Labeling cables, rolling socks, folding a poster she'd never displayed because I would have mocked it. On her desk she left 3 things. A calculus book, a photo of all 4 of us on a hike before we got so good at rules, and a sticker I'd once dismissed as nonsense. It said, "Seen people do more." On her last Sunday at home, we sat on the porch. The street was ordinary. Lawn sprinkles ticking. A neighbor teaching a kid to wobble on a bike. Ava said, without ceremony, "I'm not going to pretend graduation didn't happen, or Denver, or any of it, but I am going to college with people who see me." She looked at me then, not through me, not around me. "If you want to be one of them, you can start by asking instead of announcing." I asked if I could carry a box to the car. She said yes. The box was light. The moment wasn't. At the trunk, she hesitated, then hugged me. It wasn't a movie hug. It was the precise duration a second chance earns. Later, I scrolled through her post, starting with people who see me. No subtweets, no daggers. Just a sentence that made a map. I finally understood the thing I had been dodging with metrics and memos. Rankings don't hug. They don't sit in a parking lot and wait. They don't read the email twice to catch the part where the child says, "Please don't come." And instead of arguing, you listen because trust is quieter than being right. I kept the psychologist's line in my wallet, behind the credit cards I used to block promises. Symbols matter. So I replaced one. The laminated fridge rules came down for good. In their place, a printout taped with crooked zeal. Ask. Listen. Then decide. Unglamorous. Durable. A structure that doesn't freeze. On my first lonely evening after they left for St. Louis and the sister's house, the dog came back with Ben for drop-off and slept under my chair. I didn't measure that. I just let it be what it was. An unranked, unscheduled mercy that, for once, I didn't try to manage. Therapy is scheduled, real therapy, not the drop her off and pray hour that buys adults a virtue sticker. I'll be in the room for the first 3 sessions, then in the lobby, then back in when the story tries to outrun the facts. I told the therapist on the phone, "We're not here to build alibis. We're here to build breaks." She laughed softly, which I took as a yes. Riley rolled her eyes. She's 12. That's cardio. But she came and she didn't perform for the tissue box. There were tears, and also a question I wrote down because it was the first bend in the road. What do I do when the feeling that I'm invisible is louder than the truth that I'm not? Diane is blocked. I didn't announce it. I just did it. No more hero cakes. No more drive-by wisdom in the form of "you're welcome." Mark can see the girls curbside, per the plan we both signed when we still thought we were better people under pressure. I sent him a bullet point summary, not an essay. He replied, "Noted. I'll take accuracy over affection for now." I apologized to Harper, not for grounding Riley, but for letting 1,000 small harms stack like kindling at her feet. We ate cupcakes at a coffee shop, no candles, plenty of quiet. She said, "Mom, I needed you to choose me in the moment. I didn't defend myself with context or weather." "I hear you," I said, and we let the sentence sit between us like a warm mug you don't have to hold to feel. At home, the neighbor's TikTok faded in 48 hours, as predicted. Shame didn't. It clung in the way smells do after you burn popcorn. Mild, stubborn, a reminder you were careless with heat. I filed 2 takedowns that stuck and 1 that didn't. I stopped doom scrolling at midnight because penitence is not a hobby. When Drone Man jogged past our house and raised a palm, I didn't wave, but I didn't move the curtains either. Visibility isn't always vulnerability. Sometimes it's just a window doing its job. Riley's apologies went out on paper. She read them aloud to my parents on FaceTime. My mother cried the way people do when an apology arrives before bitterness has finished building the guest room. My father asked if Riley knew how to grill chicken yet. She laughed, hiccuping. It was not absolution. It was oxygen. There were new lines. Pantry unlocked during the day, locked at night. Sugar is not a sedative. A feelings first aid kit on the fridge. 5 things you can do before you open a camera. Breathe box-shaped, drink water, step outside, write a complaint you'll never send, find the dog and tell him a secret. She called it corny. She used it twice. Mark tried one last time to parry consequence with optics. "Can't she post a healing video instead?" he asked, as if cinematography could be therapy. "No," I said. "She can post nothing and feel something." He didn't text back. When he picked Riley up on Friday, he stayed in the car. Curbside works like a spell if both people believe in the curb. Harper came home Saturday with a stack of library books and a posture I hadn't seen in months. Loose, not hunting for fallout. We made eggs. Riley drifted into the kitchen like a truce, hair unbrushed, eyes not swollen. She asked if she could whisk. I handed her the bowl like a flag I was ready to lower if she was ready to raise hers. We ate at the table with the wooden phone box between us, empty as a promise kept. The watch sits on my wrist now. It is small and practical, a blue coin that tells me I have 60 seconds at a time to choose who I am. When I catch it in the light, I see the whole week, like a documentary I survived. Cake, pop, 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 the slammed door, the patrol car, Diane's window, the wooden box. I also see what didn't make it to anyone's feed. Harper's head leaning on my shoulder for 3 seconds. Riley putting the frosting back in the pantry at 2 a.m. without being asked 2 nights later. Me deleting a paragraph I wrote to defend myself to people who don't live here. I'm not calling the cops over a child's spiral. I will if the line is crossed again. The report is half filled out in a folder labeled for when love needs teeth. It's not a threat. It's an adult keeping track of the difference between a mistake and a pattern. Here's what I know now. Public scenes don't start in public. They start in the little places we excuse. The harmless snoop through a sister's drawer. The joke candle blown out. The cupcake stolen because sugar makes everything a poem. Repair is slower than rage. It asks for hands, not hashtags. Boundaries are not cruelty. They're the fence that keeps your garden from becoming someone else's shortcut. A do-over isn't a party. It's dishes, and a wooden box, and a girl practicing how to apologize without an audience. Next year, if I celebrate at all, it'll be a tiny dinner, 3 plates, maybe 4 if Jenna remembers she loves me more than a group chat. No cameras, just forks. I'll make a wish that isn't a wish. Patience that outlasts spectacle. Afterward, I'll wash the dishes, set the watch on the windowsill, and listen to the house be only what it is. No soundtrack, no captions. Just the quiet tick of time I get to spend on purpose, in a room with two daughters who know where the off switch lives.